Now let's look at B blood. B blood is seen in various races nowadays, except most Australian and American natives. I contend it initially came into the Indus Valley region when T males, otherwise known as KM70, sailed from the Horn of Africa with mitochondrial M1 females, along with some mitochondrial EV32 royals. We see the correlation between B blood and haplogroup M males that came into the Indus Valley, who became the R1 males. They all appear to have B blood. So M, and then we see N and O also in the areas that had B blood. M, N and O, and they all seem to correlate with the mitochondrial M females all over Asia. N males are also called K2C. Seem to be from a time when ice did not cover all the Arctic coast, and mostly now appear to have B blood and mitochondrial M, whereas early Inuits probably had O blood that were in this Siberian region. As we see, there's less B blood in that region. And Chinese people, haplogroup O, are also called K2D, are primarily B-blooded. Their hooded eyes are still a mystery, and I suggest an ancient ancestor from the Pacific Ocean could have sailed in there. We've heard of ancient Lemuria, and I think it's interesting that there are ancient ruins in this area called Nam Madal. We've already seen that the way that B blood came into the Indus Valley was probably through the haplogroup T from the Horn of Africa, and I surmise that the stock that they bred into there had something to do with why their blood became B, whereas it wasn't B when they were in Africa. So after M came into the Indus Valley, they must have been mating with the Qs that were still there. To give us R1s. R1A went over the top through Asia and into Western Europe that way, and R1Bs went up through Samaria and into Western Europe that way. We'll get to those in more detail later. Now I've shown that K males initially changed from K2B to P to Q in Eastern Europe and the Americas while retaining mitochondrial N. Yet K2C and K2D in Europe and Asia became N and O males with mitochondrial M, although I'm not sure if they were connected directly. We expect to see male L and M in between K and N, but in my opinion, as I've said, L and M were primarily African root races until later entering Asia via the Indus Valley as M1s. P males are said to be over 40,000 years before present on the tree, but no map of haplogroup P can be found. So, as I've said, it's probably the female link between these various male haplogroups, K2B, C and D. So the male tree and chart show a leap from K to P, the precursor to all the important final male group of QRT, of the modern European royal bloodline. While Q and T males derive from the CT line of K, the Rs were from the CF line initially, line of J, and have been hybridised. If you add all the Q's and R's maps that they have covered most of the modern world this last 26,000 years, except for the Middle East, where we find T's, i.e. KM70, the Arab, Persian, Sumerians. We find T males also in India, at the homeland of Krishna. As I touched on before, the early haplogroup N males may have had O blood, but the Chinese haplogroup O have B blood, so I don't think they were directly connected from N to O without some radical different DNA coming into the O's to make them so radically different. The N's cover the whole area of the Arctic Circle of the Eurasian continent. Did they just like it cold, or was it more temperate back then? As the North Pole moved, the climate changed. Mammoths lived there too before being caught in the snap change, probably about 14,000 years ago. It seems that as the pole moved, people moved west across the top. Mitochondrial N females came from the south and populated the area until 50,000 years before present. Hence, they may have also had O-positive blood group, perhaps the early Inuits. It appears that Chinese males with haplogroup O have mitochondrial M mothers, hence are from the line of KM, sons of Kane, and they have B blood and hooded eyes. Later, Inuits became B-blooded too, as mitochondrial M took over. 100,000 years before present, the Bering Strait would have been ice until 50,000 years before present. Then Siberia became more temperate and Canada was under ice until 14,000 years before present, when the northeast of Europe got cold, with Scandinavia under ice, as the pole moved much closer for a few thousand years before taking up its present position somewhere in the middle of the North Sea. Now the Arctic Circle thaws each summer, while the North Sea turns into solid ice every winter, making it impassable. After the Northland's release from the ice, the great empire of Tartaria flourished, later becoming Russia and a cold Siberia. So this leads us to when haplogroup K2b, as known as Q, changed into the B-blooded K2Cs and Ds, the Ns and Os. And what this looked like on the ground was the Mongol invasion, which happened in various eras. The Khan empires were initially Asian mixes of haplogroup Q, N and O males, but as they moved west, they were mixing with Caucasian females, including some royal, resulting in Q1b males. This would include the Scandinavian Qs, the Ashkenazi Qs and the Persian Qs. The last of the Khan empires was the Golden Horde on the Western Front, extending into Russia and Persia, with Khans looking more like Vikings. On these detailed haplogroup maps showing where Q1b came back into Europe and Persia is these lines which have been linked with Ashkenazis and the Persian Iranian groups, as we'll see here. Southwest Asia and Europe types were the type that were known to be Ashkenazis and Persians. So I feel that this explains the influx of the Viking-looking Babylonian king line that came into Sumer, came down from the north. We'll look at Q in more detail soon.